a lot to unpack from this past weekend. England is setting a bar in a very negative way from an officiating standpoint that I think the whole world would agree needs to change, but I don't even know where we start. So let's kind of unpack it a little bit, get some reactions. We'll talk about as many games you guys want to today. Let's start with where all of the drama really kind of unfolded. I think we have to start with Arsenal and then kind of work our way into the City game, the Chelsea Liverpool game on Sunday, which was a massive game for the title race and everything Liverpool's going after. We'll talk about it. But before we get there, look, man, this is honestly, man, I'm so tired of just having like this conversation around Arsenal's red cards. And I'm not going to go into whether or not it was a yellow or red. I'll let you guys chime in. I think, for the most part, most fans are just pretty torn on like whether it was in fact a red card offense or if the ref should have, kind of used a little bit more context to arrive at whatever card he was going to give Saliba. Regardless of what that was, though, how do you guys feel about how VAR like came into play, the impact that it had, not just on that situation, but kind of the precedent it set for games that we saw for the rest of the weekend? And we saw the exact same situation happen in the Liverpool game. How do you guys feel about that?
Same thing in the United game.
Yeah.
It just something needs to change because it's something's completely wrong with how VAR set up in the Prem. It's completely wrong, and it just needs to be fixed because it's coming to the point where it's actually really hurting teams. It's not even just in that game. For example, if United didn't appeal Bruno's red card, Bruno would be out for multiple games, whereas he should have never even been sent off in the first place. So not only did we were down a man against Spurs against a absolutely brutal call, it was appealed and overturned and like the
Instantly.
same day, instantly.
Yeah.
So that should just show you if that's the case, where do we go from now? Because what's the next steps? And first of all, what's the repercussions for referees for these decisions? Like what? There's no repercussions for VAR for referees. There's nothing. They're just allowed to continue to do this week in every weekend. There's something happening at least in one of the matches, and nothing is done. So I think something has to change. Will something change? Probably not. At least not this year. But something definitely needs to change.
Do you guys think part of the problem, I see some of this conversation on the timeline. Do you think part of the problem is that maybe refs want to be at the forefront of these discussions? I really can't think of another solid reason. And I don't want to, I don't want to come up here and claim conspiracies or anything, but at the end of the day, it's like refs are celebrated in a way in England that no other league, no other country really celebrates them. They give them content on Sky Sports or any other mainstream media news network out there. They give them, segments to kind of just talk about, break down these types of decisions. If these decisions don't happen, do they have much to talk about?
No, they don't. If the referees don't mess up as much as they do, there's no content to do. I mean,
it's crazy, bro. I feel like with Champions League, we never get these, right, Austin? Like we never see calls like this.
When VAR was introduced, the 18 World Cup, I think, was the first one with it. I don't think we had any issues with it. There, at least in Champions League, I haven't seen that many issues. There wasn't that many issues in the 22 World Cup. Every time you see issues with VAR, it just always is in England. And I don't know if maybe it's just because it's English and English media just overpowers. But, I mean, y'all too will know more how much y'all watch the Liga, but it's like you just don't see it from any other league. I mean, even MLS, MLS has its issues, but there's not that many VAR discussions that happens over here.
Yeah, that's actually true, bro. MLS is like, considered by many to be a strongly inferior league, like just way below, the standard of anything involved in Europe. And you never, like Austin said, you never see situations like this, but you hardly see them at this rate where every single week we're talking about the same shit, talking about VAR becoming the main discussion of debate versus us actually talking about the football that was played. Hafid, you and I, as Barca fans, both watched La Liga massively last season. Look, bro, we know how much of a problem officiating has been in La Liga. Spain doesn't pay for goal line technology. There's more than a few refs who have this reputation of favoring one big side over the other. Do you think this is potentially even worse. What's happening in England?
Firstly, it's in Spain. It's just against Barcelona. Let's make that very clear.
Oh my god,
Bro, there's
that's the whole question.
But
God,
the thing is that these like kind of dodgy decisions that you get in the Premier League, like Saliba or the one against Chelsea or the Bernardo one against City, the other teams in the league probably get that like once a season. Whereas with Barcelona, the issue that we have as fans is it's just inconsistent. Where like 1 minute you'll see this team getting the penalty, then the next minute we have the same thing, but since it's Barcelona, they're not going to give it to us. That's the only real difference. That's the only quorum there is with the refereeing in La Liga. They're always subjective, but at least they're consistent with their subjectiveness. And that's, I think, what a lot of people ask for, and that's what England lacks the most. Whether referees want to be in the limelight, I think maybe some of them do, but the majority of them don't, because a lot of them have families and they get freaking killed on social media, and then that shit affects you, especially when it's week in, week out. Let's say, for example, Michael Oliver, who somehow, some way always gets the big games every single weekend. If he's getting scrutinized week in, week out, it's going to affect him. It's going to affect you mentally. It's just like as the players who perform poorly over the course of the season. So I don't know if the referees are in the limelight or not, but I just think that there's already pressure on English referees because, English is the staple of football, blah, blah, blah. We had no referees in the 2018 World Cup. We only had one referee or two referees in the 2022 World Cup. So we're lacking in that front. We don't even have an English manager coaching the English team. So I think all that narrative on top of, VAR being integrated, you have all these tools. I think the persona in England is that every decision now should be getting 100% correct because you have VAR, you have about 10 linesmen, you have 20 different camera angles, you have goal line technology, you have offside technology. So I think the fans, pundits expect all the referees to get 100% of the decisions right. And that's not going to be the case. It's always going to be human error at some point in every single life in the world, whether you're refereeing at the firefighter or police. There's always going to be a mistake in you. That's just a human factor. I think people not fail to see that, but when that happens, they don't really consider that. But I understand also the fans' frustration in big games when they get these key decisions not in their favor. I think what I was just watching today, Howard Webb on the overlap, speaking to the other lads, Neville and Keane and Wright, about how the PGMOL, conduct these things. He was really raving and raving about how there's been no handball controversy this season, but there's been a bunch of other controversy. He brought up a good point that at the end of the day, there is no system in football that's going to be perfect. All we can do is get as close to perfect as possible. And I agree with him with that because there's never going to be a point where everyone's going to be happy. But you have to reach a point where everyone can be satisfied. So I think we've kind of reached that point in La Liga where, like, yes, you're going to have the dodgy call here and there. Probably one team per season gets that weird call. Not like Arsenal, who've already had like 4 this season, or United, who had already had a couple this season. And you tend to live with that because it's just the name of the game. But in England, they're just making huge mistakes every single weekend.
It's not even that they're making mistakes, but like they're checking the mistake and still getting the mistake wrong. That to me, that's just insane.
Yeah, and not even just wrong. It's also like consistent. Again, what Hopkins, what I took from Hopkins there was that, like, hey, even in Spain, if they get it wrong, at least they're all consistent for the most part. You're right. I agree with that. It's like if we set up, that's what I mean by precedent. When the Saliba red card happened, it's okay, fine. If that's how you're going to choose to interpret and intervene with those types of situations, let that be how you do everything moving forward. The very next day, almost the exact same time, the Tosin call happens, right? Pulls down Jota at almost the exact same position as Saliba. We can argue about what other players are around him or anything along those lines, but it was a yellow card that was not intervened with and was allowed to stand. I'm of the belief that it shouldn't change that quickly. There shouldn't be that much of a differing opinion or inconsistency between this governing body. Like,
I think honestly, the best point that you make is that at the end of the day, you have to leave the decision to the referee on the pitch because he's there at the end of the day. The VAR is supposed to be there for a clear and obvious mistake. I remember when VAR was first introduced, they always had that, graphic before the game. What VAR will do is like mistaken identity, red card, and like cleared obvious errors in the area. They've kind of fell away from that, where they want to kind of get involved all the time.
With everything.
And Jose, again, so we talked about the Bruno red card against Spurs. Howard Webb was talking about this as well, saying that, yeah, he was 100% wrong. He said in that case, they kind of wanted to leave it for the decision on the referee during the game, which I think was Chris Kavanagh, who gave the red card to Bruno, because they couldn't find a very conclusive answer in the short amount of time. He talked about a lot how they wanted to keep the VAR intervention as short as possible. But on the flip side, it's like, okay, if I have to wait for a minute to get the answer that we can all agree upon, what's a minute going to do? I think the issue is when you sit there for 3 or 4 minutes and you get the wrong answer. That's where the main problem comes in about the time that VAR takes. And I think a lot of it's kind of like the referee on the pitch is kind of refereeing the game, knowing that, okay, if I get this wrong, I have VAR. Oh, I don't know this. So it's like with the linesman as well. They always, supposed to leave your flag down for a goal scoring chance if there's an offside. But now when the offside is clear and obvious, they just let the play go through. I see it a lot with Barcelona because we're playing offside traps left, right, and center. When it's clear offside, they still let the play go on because now the linesman is just doubting his own point of view. And Howard Bev mentioned this as well. If he's like 5 years offside, flag it up. If it's close, of course, keep it down. Let the play go on and see what happens. But now when it's so clear, they're still now doubting themselves as well. So the mentality of English referees is where the problem comes in. I think the technology is fine and it's a good integration and it should be working. It's working everywhere else but England. So it just shows where the problem really lies.
Yeah,
I feel like a little bit of it is I think a little bit is referees are more worried about getting it wrong. Like, I think they're so worried about getting the call wrong that they kind of freak out a little bit.
Yep.
Because they know they're gonna get slammed in the media.
Especially with all this stuff backing them up, right? They have 5,000 angles and 4 referees, and they're still getting it wrong.
And I know every referee in every sport always never wants to be the reason that a game ends a certain way, and that's a pressure they do have. But I just feel like instead of them being like, okay, I made this call for this reason, I think they're like, I'm worried I got that wrong. Like, can someone check?
But here's and again, it's all like you guys are saying, it's interpretation, right? Because even if you felt like you were always going to get it wrong, or there's always that chance, right? VAR, sure, check, but at one point, do we determine that they should intervene? That's my biggest thing. Is like when should intervention actually take place? Because if you allow the ref to make a decision, right, he's gonna like pull his card out, unless there's like some clear error with that decision. You see something, right? And I mean, you actually see something, not someone in your ear saying, hey, that's probably a red card. It's like, why don't they ask why? Why is it a red? Give me the context, right? And then let the referee make the call. But I feel like the ref is saying, guys, did I make the right call? I gave it a yellow. Are you okay with this?
Yeah,
No? Okay, cool. Let's switch it.
I feel like refs are now a little bit more lazier because they know they have help. So they know all the decisions not on them. Therefore, they know if they possibly get the wrong call, there's backup. But I feel like that shouldn't be the case. Like, I feel like you should definitely still act like there is no VAR and determine the best situation in that play. But they just don't do that anymore.
I agree. I think no matter what, Arsenal should do what Manchester United did. I don't know if I think that will go that far, but I really hope he does. If he doesn't, he's letting down the entire fan base.
Why not? Because in La Liga, the rule is that if you appeal and you get it wrong, you might get a harder sanction. I don't think that's the case in the Premier League, so he should appeal it.
No, I think that's the same rule in the Prem. I think if you appeal it, I think so. I may be wrong, but
I've never seen it happen. If that's the truth,
then if that's the case, because why would you? Then everyone would just appeal. But I feel like
exactly. So you're probably right.
I feel like there's some situation where if you do get it wrong, there's some outcome that's gonna happen, but I'm not 100% sure.
Well, look, this is the evidence, in my opinion. Austin, hold on one second. This is the evidence, right? Is like if they need to collect it, there's 4 incidents where this exact scenario was given as a yellow, and the only one that was turned into a red was Saliba's. And so I think you look at any one of these screenshots, right, and kind of when the player was pulled down. In some of these scenarios, the player was significantly more on his path to goal, right? And it was a more clear of a goal scoring opportunity, and those were given as yellow versus the half line tackle of Saliba, or just above the half line tackle of Saliba that was turned into a red. So if he doesn't appeal it, I'll be fuming, because obviously we need our best player, in all honesty, not just best defender, but best player available for this game against first place Liverpool. Before we move on to predictions, Manchester City and everything that did you guys see how the whole play went down? Did you guys get a good look at what Bernardo Silva was doing in that? Because I think O'Neill's from Wolves has a very good point he's making.
What was the point that he made?
The point that he made was that he said it very subtly, didn't like point to the fact that Man City gets all the calls, but he basically said subconsciously he believes that refs may be favoring, like what you said, Hafid, top teams in the league. This happens everywhere, right? There's always some bias that goes into it.
Every sport.
Yeah, every sport. I don't think it's just it's not just football. But he kind of said like, hey, no one's praying for Wolves to lose. Like if they are, then football's already lost. But he feels like when these moments happen, that too often the big teams walk away with the decision, even if it's highly controversial. And he kind of made the point that like these big teams don't need help, especially Manchester City, right? Especially the best team in the world. They don't need help. Like they already have everything. They don't need the refs on their side too. But he didn't flat out say it out of fear of the FA coming in and kind of slapping his wrist.
Did Bernardo Silva ever intervene with Jose Sa in that play, or was he just standing in front of him the whole time?
He actually,
he pushed him, touch him.
Here, let me show you.
I think
because I only saw the highlights.
From what I watched, is that he kind of ducked, which I think is the reason they went against it.
But see, but don't Arsenal do this week in, week out? They kind of push the keeper, then they kind of move away. He did the same thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I agree with that. I agree with that. And so when that happens,
I think him ducking is a big point.
That's what I think. Yes. I think him ducking is what saved him. At least I'm just trying to think of what they are, which sometimes you don't know what they're. But I think they see him duck, and because it's all about his point at his sight. Like as long as he's not being blocked in
the vision.
View, field of vision. And I think he could see the ball. That's what I think. That's the reason they went with it. But
I also think that when I watched the VAR back, because I was watching this game, I didn't see this angle. Like all you ever saw was Bernardo Silva. This happened right before the ball actually came his way, and he was already ducked at that point. So like the angle that we got as an audience was Bernardo was still there offsides. It's just that he wasn't impeding Sa in the moment that the ball came through, and he did ducked already. So, but if you look at it right before, and the reason I went to it was because Ben Foster pointed it out. So he was saying like, hey, I'm probably gonna get flack for this, but like that goal probably shouldn't have stood because as the keeper, any part of the play where a player's impeding you in an offside position, the goal shouldn't stand. The difference with Arsenal,
his opinion.
I think it's a rule. Well, he knows better than I do. I honestly, I've looked at the rule book. I couldn't tell you. He knows better than I do. But I will say that the difference between this and like Arsenal is that I agree that Arsenal impede the keeper quite a bit. It's just that it happens on a corner kick where the ball, where that player's not offside. The ball's level with him, right? So the offside kind of gets removed from that. Then it just becomes, is he impeding the keeper or not? To me, there were two big questions you had to ask of what Bernardo Silva was doing here, and that's what makes it very controversial.
I want to know what happens from this angle. Like, the Sa push, is Bernardo just staying there in the offside place and he knows that, and Sa just comes and pushes him? Like, I want to know what happened. Because if Bernardo Silva, in this case, if the ball's coming in, he pushes Sa backwards and then ducks, I would agree that it should be chopped up. But he's just staying there, and Sa kind of come to push him. They kind of have a little bit of a wrestle match, and they kind of separate ways. The header comes in and he ducks. I don't see why the goal should be ruled out. I think it depends on how much Bernardo Silva impede Jose Sa, mainly because, again, he is offside. But not only Arsenal, I see Tottenham do it all the time as well. I see Newcastle do it a few times where, again, the keeper's just getting bombarded every single time. I even see it with Barcelona sometimes. So you kind of expect it, kind of have like the little wrestle match before the corner kick comes in. And once it comes in, it's like, oh, it's like every man for himself. So
again, I think the one factor is just the fact that he's sitting in an offside position. That's one of my biggest things. But again, I agree with everything you said, Austin.
And I think this is something that I was listening about college football, but I think still shots, obviously, like you look at this one, you're like, oh, this is bad. But this is a still shot, and even slow motion ones. Like the game's not played in slow motion.
Yeah.
Or still shots. Like
I kind of finessed Bruno in the Tottenham game, the slow motion.
And I think sometimes, and kind of going back on VAR, I think sometimes they only focus on the still shots and slow motion instead of just watching the play in full time. Like,
yeah,
I think sometimes that does help, like especially with handballs and close proximity.
I was about to say that I feel like slow motion should only be used for handballs, or maybe like penalties, like tackles. It shouldn't be really used.
But even like some, I think they've done better with handballs in close proximity. But
like how was saying,
it's like, but I mean, if a player's
I mean, look, the rest a little bit. They push away from each other, like right when the ball is kicked. See, like right here, like this is before the header even comes in.
They stop the play for the still frame and then they show it. But in real time, this is happening like a second before the ball comes in. That's what I'm saying. It's like when it's one of those scenarios, and again, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure the goal was chopped off. City got super upset. Yeah, it was chopped off. And this is what I'm saying. When there's this much of a question mark around it, you go with the on-field decision.
Where does this header? The header goes to
Saw's
left, right?
Yeah. So
well, it goes to Saw's left in the goal.
Yeah, it kind of comes in the middle. It kind of goes like right here. Right here is kind of where the ball flies in.
But it does go away from Bernardo Silva, as if maybe if that ball goes over Bernardo Silva, then they chalk it off because that ball literally goes right over him.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. I mean, we could probably sit here all day and look at every decision and not really.
Yeah,
know.
no, it's fair. Again, what I'm preaching more than anything
else,
it's
such a hard thing, and I think we all know that refereeing is a hard job. VAR is a hard job, and it's not about being perfect. It's about being almost perfect.
It's about being consistent. That's all that I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is that like I want there to be consistency, and I don't believe VAR should be re-refereeing games. There's no point in having a main referee in the middle of the field if VAR is just going to come in and be like, nope, you did this wrong. There's no error, but I would have called it this way, so that's what the call should be. That doesn't make sense to me. Like the interpretation of the technology needs to change.
Yeah, they could have changed it this year, and I could be wrong. I thought I heard something about it. But to me, when the referee goes to the monitor, he should have more say because he saw the play live. Like
exactly.
The guy
Chris
in
Kavanaugh,
his ear,
by the way.
Yeah, the guy in his ear, whoever is, be like, okay, I think you might have missed this. So maybe go to the video and just to see it. And I think that's how it should be. And then the referee goes over there and said,
maybe I haven't noticed. Maybe I
Okay.
haven't noticed, but I feel like they don't go to the monitor that much anymore. I feel like they just get the call.
I feel like they do.
And that's it.
No, they go and they barely look, then they just go back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think they go to the monitor anymore. I feel like
it's funny you both say that because in this scenario, Kavanaugh went to the monitor for like a second. I shit you not. He went, looked at it, and was like, all right, cool. And reverses it, calls it a goal for City. And it's just like
last season, they had the monitor for longer than they are listening to the earpiece.
Because that new rule, right, where it's like it's referees' judgment, refs' judgment. That's like the whole like a new rule that was implemented around VAR interpretation. So yeah, look, Austin's right. We could go back and forth on this all day. I just think, I'm hoping that we can start to see more consistency in the league. And I'm honestly, I don't want the Prem to turn into a farmers league, which at the end of the day, I feel like it's on its path to doing with how much.
It's 100% on its path.
City win the league this year. They definitely are Farmers League.
Well, it's not even just winning, right? It's sure the title one thing too, but like everything tends to go City's way. Yeah, it's all of it. All of it. This is City's league. It's really what it feels like. It feels like Bayern right in the Bundesliga.
Every year, the gap.
Welcome to my world, lads.
And the Prem is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, if like there's an agenda for not just for City, but really against any one of City's rivals, whether it's United, Arsenal, Liverpool.
That's what if anyone else wins the league but City, it'll feel much sweeter because not only are you facing City, but you're facing everyone.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But I don't want to become disinterested in the Premier League before that happens. That's my only fear. So again, if you disagree or agree, let us know in the comments down below. We'll take all of it. I'm just curious to see how the fans feel thinking about some of the crazy calls that we saw this past weekend.